Out here in the Arizona desert, hidden among rugged mountains and wide open country, sits one of the state's most memorable ghost town experiences. Today we're visiting Castle Dome, where preserved buildings, old mining relics, and frontier history bring the past back to life. Come along as we explore this remarkable place and see why it remains a favorite stop in the Southwest. I decided to start rolling a little earlier than arriving at our actual location, which is only about 8 miles away, but I wanted to film the drive in to where we're going today in case anybody else is interested in going to where we're going, and you can see what the road is like going in. So because it's going to be dirt, but I suspect dirt that any car should be able to make under normal circumstances back here, passenger cars included, because we're going to a pretty well-known-ish museum here in Arizona. One that's a bucket list item for me. We're going to be spending quite a bit of time in this region back here, which a lot of this would be the Kofa, King of Arizona, right? King of Arizona, named after a mine, I believe, but the Kofa Wilderness area near Yuma, Arizona. We're probably about a little less than an hour from Yuma, Arizona. What we're basically going to be seeing are the leftovers of a time long ago, one of my favorite periods of history, certainly Arizona history, when settlers from the east were making their way out here in a completely different, dangerous time, trying to seek their fortune and glory out in this rough desert here in Arizona. And it's about 5 after 10 a.m. This thing opens at 10 a.m., by the way, at least this time of the year. And I believe they shut down sometime in April, actually, or maybe early May, for the summer. Like, they don't have summer hours because it's so dang hot that nobody wants to come out. And I think right ahead, that weird feature sticking up, I want to say that's probably the Castle Dome, if I had to guess, that big, protuberance on the mountains. And then, somewhere, back off in these hills, there are other mines all around here, one of which we're going to be seeking out on another episode when I'm done today. It's not gonna be part of this episode, but there's a mine out there that I've been wanting to, a bucket list item. Both this museum and the mine that I want to go visit are both bucket list items for me. So I've waited years to do this, but oftentimes I miss a window of opportunity and wait too long and then realized, oh, they're closed because it's summer, and then I gotta wait until later, and it's pretty far away from where I live, so not the most convenient location to get to. So it's been a long time coming, so really super excited about this today, if I haven't mentioned that like 10 times already. Castle Dome, Arizona became one of the territory's most important mining districts after silver and lead discoveries in the 1860s. Its location near the Colorado River gave miners a major advantage, allowing ore and supplies to move through Castle Dome Landing by steamboat. Large-scale mining expanded after 1869, and the nearby town of Castle Dome quickly grew to support the district. By the 1870s, mines like the Flora Temple and Castle Dome Mine were among Arizona's leading producers. Though known for silver, the district also produced large amounts of lead, along with zinc, copper, and gold. Most of Castle Dome's historic production came before 1900, during the height of Arizona's mining boom. The area saw renewed activity during both World Wars, when lead was in high demand for industry and ammunition. Mining continued on and off for decades before finally ending in 1978. Today, Castle Dome stands as a reminder of how mining shaped early Arizona and helped build settlements across the desert Southwest. And I think we are at the museum entrance, folks.
Turn left.
The gate's open, so that's a good sign, right? Private property, Castle Dome Mining Museum, open daily, 10 to 5, May through September, call for time. So basically, I think it's through the end of April. And we're at, I thought there was, it says that Castle Dome peak that we see, that big thing, is 3,780 feet tall. Do not enter, so I'm gonna guess this is where we need to be. And no smoking, everybody. Put that cigarette away. So all I need to do is get my camera equipment ready, and I see the entrance to the museum. I forget how much it costs. Might be a little on the pricey side, like 28 bucks or something, I want to say, but I'll confirm once I get in there. So let me get everything situated, and I'll see you guys on foot. All right, we made it. We're actually here after all of these years, and it's already a lot cooler than I thought it would be. There's an overwhelming amount of stuff here. So let's start to unpack this. $20 for the just kind of walking tour, self-guided tour. And I'm not doing, I think it's the Hull Mine. There's actually a tour where they take you underground, and they have some of the coolest minerals down there. They've recently discovered even new ones that I think they turn on like fluorescent lights and it all glows and it looks beautiful. But gonna have to pause on that one today, but wow. I guess we'll just kind of maybe start here, and you are allowed to go into buildings here. You can open doors and go in, and just make sure you close it behind you, but let's get it started. Apparently, yeah, a lot of these buildings we're gonna see are originals. There will be some signs, I think, to help us demystify some things here, but you know, we also need to keep in mind some of these are probably reconstructions also, or salvaged from other locations. So I don't think you're seeing this exactly like the town would have looked precisely, although there might be some things in the original locations. We'll kind of unpack that as we dig in here. Yeah, there's just so many artifacts too. I don't know, that looks like something to grind something. I don't know, food or rocks, I don't know. And lots of really cool old signs that I see off the bat too. A lot of antiques and a nice rickety old floor. Oh yeah, here's the miner's diner. So she said there's water in here if you need. I'm fine at the moment, so. But look at this. Are these like period newspapers? They look the part. February, okay, not as old as you'd think, but 1928. So almost 100 years old. This is where I hate filming all the time, because I would just love to sit in here and read and study these old things. This is 1943. So I imagine they found some of the stuff here on the premises. Maybe these were things, they would use this stuff as insulation in a lot of old homes, as we've seen. So wouldn't be surprised if that's how they found it. One of many structures I fancy we're going to be going in. I mean, this is going to be a busy day for me. All right, this looks like this has not only the age, but the smell. So it's talking about this. The stone cabin, seen on several Highway 95 signs, was a busy little place for about 36 years. It says that this case was an original in a restaurant that held various items sold at Stone Cabin. So imagine if we went back far enough in time, this would be a busy little building, it sounds like. It's already overwhelming how many artifacts they just have laying around. I was also told too, if it's not behind glass, that you can typically pick things up and look at them too. This appears to be an old bank. This one might have a chance of being an original, I suppose, like the stone walls. Let's take a look and see if there's anything in there that says, but look how ornate that actually is. It's probably like from a ceiling. Usually you'd see that style. I don't know what that's called, but see that in a lot of Old West style buildings. Oh, wow. So far I'm not seeing any signs that confirm or deny the originality of this, but to me it seems like this might have a shot at being one of the originals. Especially something about these stone walls that make me think that. And all of this stuff here, it's like metal, almost like an aluminum type feeling, but I don't know if that's exactly what it is. But there's an old safe down here. There are a few other patrons and voices I hear often on the property, but other than that though, it's just so, you get these moments in buildings like this where it's just so extraordinarily quiet. It's eerie almost. So I know there's like the property's kind of split and you can go walk. This might be where it was. There's a trail here where there's a bunch of other buildings, I think she said, that are kind of like left how they stood. But we're gonna save that once I see it for later, but this looks to be some kind of a workshop. Probably before safety standards were important. I've read about very bad accidents having to do with machines just like this. One at Vulture City, a verified death, I want to say in the 1920s, of a young man who got caught in a belt and then basically got like strung up in the machine and broke almost every bone in his body. So, you know, this kind of stuff would have been very dangerous to be around, I imagine. But these definitely look old. It's pretty thick. The brand, I think, is called Monarch. If that means anything to anyone. I'm reading it sideways, so I might have it wrong. But these look like various drills, like to basically a workshop, I'm guessing, to help maintain mining equipment, I imagine. Sharpening drills, fixing items, probably things like that if I had to guess. And various other things, maybe just for building and whatnot. But wow, this is really cool actually. This looks like a blacksmith shop. I'm guessing you've got, forget the name of that for some reason at the moment, but this looks like the real deal to me. See some horseshoes and other evidence of metalworking in here. Some of you, I'm sure, know a lot more about this kind of thing than I do, but just look at the artifacts here on display. Just tons of wrenches, and those look like drills right there, like the drill bits that they would drill during mining. All right, I think I say this in almost every video when I visit places like this. They love their mannequins, and I came around the corner and then just saw that sitting there, and just for that one split second, you're not expecting it. So as a human being, I see a person and it frightens me. I don't think I'm thinking anything specific. I'm not like, oh, is it a ghost or is it a real person? I just wasn't expecting it, so it kind of freaks me out. But look at all this. This must be an old store. People back then needed their clothes still, you know? They weren't working in the nude. Maybe some of the miners were, though. I know it got hot inside those old mines. That's why people can find jeans sometimes, is that miners would just leave them in there. You would think this would be a haven for scorpions, too. I bet you in these fabrics, if you were to unpack every little shelf, I don't even want to think about what we might find. Because these places are just wide open, it's very old, and oftentimes there's very little between the floor and the dirt down there. There's usually big gaps in there, so I'm sure lots of critters try to take up residence in places like this. And look at these creepy old photos. That one in particular, she has a devious look on her face. I would say so far, I had high expectations of this, and my expectations are definitely exceeded for sure. I would say there's more to see here than I was thinking for some reason. So it's just, this is a lot to unpack, but it's so worth it and so cool. Coming into the church, you got to keep your eyes open, because this here is really a cool artifact. This is the last grave marker at Castle Dome Graveyard. I know we might be able to see that later, but you could see, just like we've seen in the wild, there's very little left of, a lot of markers from back then, because they were made of wood, just like this. So the fact that they were able to scavenge this and preserve it and put it on display here, I think is actually amazing, because most of the time old pioneer graveyards, things like this are just completely lost to time and deteriorated and dust in the wind eventually. So that's neat. That's really neat. Something's telling me that this might be one of the original buildings, and because I really don't have a way to know, thought we'd have an easier time discerning that today, but that's okay. Look at these old organ pipes. Not the cactus, but I wonder if that is from the premises. That, very well could be. There's an old organ there, an old Windsor organ. That is amazing. And then there's this old style ceiling. Anybody out there know the term for this style? You see it in a lot of old 1800s, like saloons and turn of the century buildings, but I never learned, I guess, the name of this style. It's usually like a thin metal on the ceiling. If it's tin or aluminum or something, I don't know. But very common in that time frame. We've seen it time and time again. All right, this is another interesting thing that I walked right by it. So let's check this out. This is kind of a morbid thought, but what it's saying is when a miner died in a mine, his boots were hung upside down on a rafter nearest where his soul left his body. Thus, he was remembered. This boot, the one right here, was found in the Flora Temple mine in a semi-caved-in area. The miner's name is unknown, and he is buried in the Castle Dome graveyard. So I'd never heard that one before about hanging the boots upside down, but it sounds like something legit like they would do. The next thing we're going to check out is the sheriff's office, because no old West town would be complete without an old sheriff's office. This is neat. This one has a feeling of originality also, like to me. And look at this, you got Original or not, though, it does just transport you back. I feel like I'm in the game Red Dead Redemption or something like that in here, or an Old West movie, but this one in particular definitely has a feel to it. And we'll look at the cell in a minute, but look at the old firearms they have on display. I'm not really an expert in that, but you've got these old reports, so I'm assuming these were transcribed from like a real incident. I'm not sure, but here, for example, June 4th, 1881, killing at Castle Dome. So Rafael Gutierrez was shot and killed by Florencio Sanchez, who goes by the name of Blanco Flores. This outlaw is killed in cold blood, and the reward is $2,000, which would have been a lot of money back then. I mean, the way these are written, they sound legit, almost like newspaper articles. And if so, then yeah, there's definitely, if that is verifiably true, then there was murder and mayhem in this town occasionally, like you'd find at almost any town like this that we go visit. You don't really see too many of these. I know they said you can touch if things are not, oh my God, that's heavy. It's a real ball and chain. Wow, you wouldn't think that thing, like just for scale. Here's my foot. But that is heavy. Imagine being shackled with that on. I don't know if I could ever say I've ever seen one of those in person. You see them in movies and stuff, but I've never had the opportunity to try to lift one up, but that is no joke. If you had that around you, I don't think you're going to be going for a hike in the desert. You'd get worn out fast. And here's, I guess, an example of the cell, or perhaps the cell itself. Looks like they just encased it all in rock. In here, I do have one curiosity, though, that I'll call out here in a second. But, I mean, this is feasibly the real deal. The only weirdness to me that makes me question, and the skeptic in me, is I look at this, right? So you got like solid rock, metal bars. I mean, this is definitely not budging. I don't think you're getting through that if you're locked in here. But like if you wanted to escape, I think this would be quite easy, given the opportunity for someone to dismantle and go straight up through the roof if someone really wanted to get out of here. So that's something I'm kind of calling into question. Maybe it is real. Maybe it was just like that. You can see, just maybe looking for pieces of evidence. I do see some screws up there that I don't think they machined screws like that back in the 1800s. So and here's another one that's kind of holding the roof together. So either it's partially reconstructed or restored, or kind of an imagining of something like this. So I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, though, I'm sure things like this, if this isn't perfectly original, things like this did exist. We've seen some actual real ones, and one thing I can say in real ones, that even the ones that are made of wood, it's thick wood, and if you see some, there ain't no escaping some of those that we've seen. Like in Bannock might be a good example of what I'm thinking about that we saw last year. I think they did have a jail house, and that's kind of a good example of probably a real one. But anyway, this is cool. I think I remember seeing this on other people's videos. Another one of those dang mannequins. Wow. This is beautiful. Kind of creepy, just because, there were like a small family here when I first arrived, and they were leaving. I think I am completely alone now. with these mannequins, and they freak me out a little bit. You see like pictures, old looking pictures with, like, nobody smiled back then because they were all so serious. Getting a picture taken was probably a once in a lifetime event, so they typically, I think, tried to emulate classical paintings and stuff like that and have like serious expressions. But when you're visiting it today, they all look mean or mad or scary. She got me twice because the reflection in the mirror. So it got me when I walked in, and now I saw a reflection in the window. I'm like, oh, there's somebody here. Nope, it's just a mannequin. And of course, like any proper mining town of the Old West, I am sure it was not dry. As you can see here, oftentimes in places like this, they probably would have just discarded and thrown bottles away into like little refuse piles. And I'm gonna guess that over time, they were able to get some of these, although I do question. This is dated 1876 with a photo on it, so obviously that seems to be probably a reconstruction, but others absolutely look real to me and worn with time. Now with artifacts like that too, when I travel around, you gotta be careful because you gotta keep in mind this would have been a very busy town in the 1900s also, especially World War II era, where I'm sure they repurposed and reused buildings. So when you see artifacts like that, you can't really read the dates on all of them, but chances are some of them still could be 1900s, not all necessarily 1800s. But what do we got back here? Looks like this is the gambling hall and an old roulette table. I don't know anything about like dating old games. I know Pharaoh was the big deal, the card game back in the Old West, like the real Old West. I don't know if roulette was, I don't know if roulette was a thing. Something just fell behind me, like a hat. I guess the ghosts are coming. But you also had, is that craps? So if I knew, yeah, it looks like an old craps table. So if I knew the dates of games, you might be able to date these tables, because something's telling me that 1860s, 1870s Castle Dome, I'm gonna guess, may not have had roulette quite yet. Or if they did, nothing that fancy out here. That would be a lot to haul back in the early days. I would love to go up there, but they do have it locked with a padlock, so I don't think they want people up there. But it looks like they did I can kind of peek into a room up there, and it looks like they do have it, like, maybe they have special tours you can do that let you go up there. But it's a fantastic little building, actually. That's where we just came from in there. So we'll kind of circle back around now, and we will take a look. We kind of got to the pinnacle of the town. Now we're working our way back towards the front. And then I think later, before we leave, there's a way we can go walk down this road and we can find the cemetery, I think, and maybe some more, I think she said original buildings and original placements out there somewhere, if I heard her correctly. So we'll see what we can find in a bit. I think we're in a general store now, is what I would have to say. And it says, here's some information for once. So the first open for business mercantile at the Castle Dome mines began in 1870. And it's trying to interpret this. It says the first mercantile opened up in 1870. So I'm guessing this isn't necessarily the first mercantile. And maybe it's just representative of what one would be like. But there's a lot of really cool artifacts all over here, though, that we got to check out. First, I was going to say these are probably just replica cans, but when you look carefully at the actual can itself, I mean, they look original. I don't know if there would actually be anything inside of those anymore, if they're still sealed or not, but it does make for good pictures and video. Burnham brand lima beans. If anybody wants some lima beans, here you go. Once again, I was told you can touch if it's not behind glass. So let's see if this bell still works. Nope. No work. This is the old dentist office, Doc Carter, which I think this one looks like it's closed, but we could look in there. And it does look like that chair looks original to me. Yeah. Sometimes, if you didn't know this, the town barber would have been the one that could have played the role of a dentist to do simple things like tooth extractions and things like that. But imagine having to get dentistry done in the late 1800s, late 1800s, or even the 1900s. I'm sure it was it's already not a pleasant experience in our time in 2026. Imagine back then. I doubt that they had like pain relief to numb you up like they do today. Probably just gave you a swig of whiskey. So regardless of whether the building itself is perfectly original or not, looking at some of these old bottles and labels, a lot of the artifacts certainly seem to be. It's a little bit more back here than I was thinking. They were hidden there. I came from over there, and that building was blocking the view, but there's definitely more to see back here. This is an old bar. This is probably more representative of like an Old West setup, a really Old West setup. Because a lot of the old bars were just shacks, like this, and there wasn't anything fancy about them at all. Oh, look at those bottles. Those don't have any labels on them, but something about those, to me, feels old. I can tell you. I mean, that is thick glass. What do we have here? I don't know if this is part of an old mill to process ore, a lot of heavy equipment, or maybe a hoist, more likely. I don't think we're sitting on top of a mine right here, although some of the mines are very nearby, but you also do see old dynamite, Hercules brand dynamite boxes where the dynamite was. One of the common ones that you oftentimes see in places like this. And then Union Carbide, I assume for carbide lamps. Usually when I start seeing wood, like where things like this are made of wood, that's usually a good indicator of age. And it does look like maybe it's some kind of crusher. Like if you come around here, some kind of, oh yeah, it's a little stamp actually. So ore would have been fed through that, and those things would have crushed rocks into smaller bits, I guess, sort of like what you see here. Probably would have been very noisy in here, I'd have to imagine. We've seen a few in the wild, actually. Kind of getting the Chemung vibes, where we saw a lot of really heavy equipment attached to an otherwise deteriorating wooden building from the early 1900s. Probably seeing a mix of things from different eras. And you have definitely, looks like we haven't seen a lot of ore carts around here, but here's the first one that I've taken notice of anyway. It looks like an original. Something I really want in life. I would love to have a real authentic ore cart and then maybe have a display in my backyard, like in a garden or something, and make like an Old West themed garden. But oh yeah, look at this. This is an example of an old cage. So my understanding is typically they would lower men down shafts hundreds of feet deep into small cages like this, so they could, get off at whatever level they wanted to work in the mine, and imagine that, something like that. And this here looks like an antique. Usually when you see rivets like this, my understanding is that's kind of a sign of the 1800s. You know, they stopped using rivets, I think, as we go into the 1900s. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is an 1800s antique. I don't know exactly what it would have been. Is it some kind of a boiler or something to pressurize water? Is this like a stove or something? Steam engine, maybe used in hydraulic mining, something like that. Oh, this is cool. So do not climb on that wagon or you're going to be wanted, like the example there, but it does have a number on it. And I'm guessing this is another antique. This definitely looks like it's got the age. Trying to poke through up here so we can get a good look at it, but it's easier said than done. Oftentimes in some of these 1800s mining towns, you know, later times you'd have automobiles and gas-powered items. So Vulture City actually has a lot of cool antiques on display from that era. And this kind of reminds me of that, but looks like an old service station potentially. See a lot of old like oil signs. Never heard of Zuraline. And I presume an old pump. I don't know. Looks awfully in good shape, but I don't know if that's a restored original. Looks old. Definitely not from the 1800s, but still looks like diagnostic equipment, potentially for oh yeah, there you go, electronic engine tester. Wow, this is chock full of old, looks like auto parts. Trying to see if we could see any dates on any of these cans. So far I don't see anything, but I'm gonna guess 20s, 30s, and 40s would be a likely time frame for a lot of this. And there's another person, I assume this may have been like a small little bring your car for service and get some food, or come visit Molly. Hi, Molly. How are you? You look depressed. You okay? And I guess this is stuff from that stone cabin cafe that we heard about earlier, actual pictures of patrons from back in the day. So this would actually be the 1950s. Some of these photos were actually taken. So maybe my dating is somewhat off. Maybe some of the stuff extends into the 50s, maybe even the 60s. Wow, this is a maze in here. So you got a collection of cigarette lighters donated by Miss Mildred Twid Davis. She collected over 1,200 lighters and she never smoked. Look at that. So these aren't the cheap plastic lighters, of course. These are all quite cool. I mean, I would agree, like, you don't need to be a smoker to collect something like that. Look at that. Some of them, I don't know what the oldest ones would be. I'm gonna guess there's probably a mix in there, but that's really cool. For some reason, I really enjoy seeing that. I see an Opryland in NFL. So I'm gonna guess you got stuff from the 60s and 70s. Maybe onward in here too. Well, this is neat, I have to say. This is actually like one of the coolest towns like this that you can visit, you know, especially when you consider all of the artifacts they have on display from the various eras in here. And this thing looks like, this looks the part to me. My guess is a old miner's cabin. You would see a lot of this stuff on places we visited where just miners would take what they could find and make a makeshift residence out of it. So let's see if I'm right. It is a canvas tent, so it's almost like they had a, you know, miner's tent, which these, probably a lot of miners, more of them back then, lived in tents. Sometimes, you know, you'd share a tent or rent a side of a tent. There'd be 2 beds oftentimes in here, and you may not know who you're sharing it with, but usually the canvas tents like this are more of what most of these miners probably lived in early on, because there wasn't really a lot of wood out in the desert, you know, to build actual permanent structures. So you usually end up with tent cities, basically. Here we go, 1864 tent replica. A similar one was used by Colonel Snively, or Snively. So this is a replica tent, but I've seen some of these before, and yes, this does look like something you would see back then. This looks pretty cool over here. Gotta keep my head down and look at this. All around here are the markings of what I presume are earlier visitors here from not that long ago, but I see 1968. So these look like military folks. So we are in a military area. I think the Army, like I said, has a proving grounds that we're up against. So all of these are like military personnel. Oh, World War II soldiers training in the desert left behind this and that while training. So I'm guessing some of these are like ammo boxes and empty shell casings from soldiers training during World War II, which I'm actually exploring other similar training centers from World War II, patents like tank divisions and those training for desert climates like in North Africa. But this is fantastic in here. So I'm not really sure I'd like to know the story on this, you know, because clearly this was something that military personnel felt the need to leave their mark. So I don't know where this came from originally, if this was on Castle Dome and they encouraged military personnel to sign. I mean, it's just covered in dates. I see 1954 through 58. I guess it doesn't really mean that. Some of these I don't think necessarily mean that they were written on those exact dates. I think people are putting the dates that they served rather than the date that they wrote on this. But this is, so far, I'm sure I've been scanning over it. There's one from the 2000s, but that's really cool. And this is Waltz, I presume a barber shop. Number 2 on some tour that we don't have guidance from, but let's go take a look, because whoa, that scared me again. So so this is interesting. So it's kind of a interesting choice to do that. And I don't know if they're making a joke about maybe the barber's not very good at shaving somebody, or maybe they're referencing more along the lines of what old school barbers would do. There's actually some things that we're gonna go seek out on a different episode. The Big Eye Mine, an old gold mine out in the hills. So you can still see what's left of the Big Eye by driving the slow 15 miles or so. And then you gotta walk up about an 1/8 of a mile, and they actually have original cabins there, is my understanding. So we'll hopefully be able to find that later on a different episode, which I'll be filming after this. But a lot of historic photos in here of the various mines in this area. The Hall mine, actually, is one that I think that's the one you can tour today, where they can take you underground. Oh, and a little classroom here. Oh, another mannequin too to freak you out as you come around the corner. So earlier I think I mentioned this may have been primarily a gold mine. I might be incorrect. This is talking about silver, like high-grade ore, so maybe it was more of a silver mine. I'm sure they mined all of it, but apparently I think this is an original cabin for a George Adams, who was a miner and a mine owner around the turn of the century. So, and his name is associated with a district of silver mines known as the Adams Group. So, and his cabin was used and reused and survived time as much as any building can. So, and what they know about him from Billy Casey, who's the owner of the Danny Boy mine in the 1950s, is that he was a cheerful man with his old face and bright eyes who liked his cut-off corncob pipe, the desert, and the living he had mining Castle Dome silver. A lot of old discarded cans and broken glass. I was reading something back there. They were talking about glass and how you don't really start seeing clear glass until the 1930s when they used selenium to, I guess, make the glass clear. So my assumption is colored glass, or yellowed glass especially, is probably indicative of an older time. There we go. There's a sign saying follow path, and it just says 70s. So the 1970s? I don't know. I'm guessing, they marked the trail very clearly, so I'm assuming that might be something we can go check out. Yeah, look at this. This is another numbered item, number 10. And there's a classic Pontiac. That is a classic in there. Oh, they actually have a sensor so the lights turn on too. This is cool. Ooh, look at that. Is that a Porsche? That's a classic one. One of my favorite vehicles actually are old Porsche 911s from with the big whale tails from the late 70s, early 1980s. And I was for a second I was like, oh, did someone drink one too many martinis at lunch and are taking a nap back there? Just as long as they don't start to move. And an old Pontiac, which I think that's General Motors, is it not? And Pontiac is no more. But some of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with Pontiac. Did you know that your husband's laying on the ground in there?
Yep.
Oh, you are?
The fool.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so he did have a little bit too much to drink.
Yeah, came back late from the bar.
He'll be out for a few hours. Okay, no worries. I'll come back later. I know it said 70s on the sign, and this does look like something out of the 1970s, some of the style here, so, and even the vehicles look like they might, I would guess, 1970s vintage, but I'm not a car expert. I'll just claim that right now.
You gonna leave or what?
Yeah, it looks like we can keep going. There is more. So she was right, actually. There is quite a bit more back here, actually. They do have a lot of metal sculptures on the property, I think, that are part of a different tour that I read about that I'm not doing today, but I'm guessing that dinosaur is one of them. It reminds me of Anza Borrego and Ricardo Bracheda's work. I wonder if he had something to do with this. It's possible. If you're not familiar with Anza Borrego, we actually made a video where there's tons of sculptures like this out in the desert. And we even had Mr., I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I say Bracheda, maybe it's Bracheda, Braceda, I don't know. But he even commented on our Instagram once. So he saw something we posted. So he's still out there, still doing his trade and his art. And another old building. Looks like some kind of almost like shiplap, but not quite style. But there's just a treasure trove of stuff out here. And another surprise. They like to, I think someone does that on purpose. They must. They must think it's funny to scare me like that, especially when you put a woman floating in the air like that. This is chock full of stuff, man. There's so much to look at. So far, I would give this an A+. Ooh, they even have old, oh, we're here. Okay, so I think we're gonna go down there, but old Spanish diggings. So keep in mind, the Spanish were here before all the cowboys and Wyatt Earp and all that kind of business, you know, back in the probably 1600s into the 1700s. So that's really cool. I'd like to see that actually. So if we're there and the path kind of forks, I think Spanish digging should be off to our left. All right, so I guess here we go. I guess these are the Spanish workings or diggings. And it says that Spanish workings dug by Indian slaves who later revolted and killed the Spanish. They dug about 16 feet deep. And by 1862, Palo Verde and ironwood trees were growing out of old Spanish dumps up to 30 feet. So I guess they made for good habitats for that. But we're looking at, presumably, I don't see why it wouldn't be the actual, you don't see stuff like this, which is really cool, where the Spanish were out here. And I don't know which natives, I'm gonna guess the Tejano A'adham people or ones that were exploited a lot by the Spanish, as we learned about at Tumacacori. So I would guess maybe that, or maybe Yaqui, I don't know, like who they were exploiting to do all of their work out here. That's actually really cool. Like, I mean, you don't really get to see a lot of evidence of, you know, the Spanish times in Arizona. Tumacacori to date is really one of the most fantastic remnants from that period of history that is still standing. There are a couple other things you can seek out, other remnants of missions and things, if you know where to look. Some are not accessible to the public without an arranged tour. And I'm sure there are archaeological sites that are being worked that the common guy like me wouldn't have access to. But anyway, cool. Like there is so much here. So the old mill site. So this is definitely what she was talking about in the office with 100% certainty. So 100% allowed to come back here. And it is well marked, so they do have plenty of signage kind of pointing you and keeping you on the rails if you do this. I imagine a lot of people skip this and don't really realize this is all here. But I'm guessing there's the old mill. I see a head frame down there, so maybe we'll actually see some old mines. What do we got here? This is 1871, the Flora Temple Mine. Patented mine. 1 mile long mine. Silver ore. Silver galena. Looks like a hoist or something. And sure enough, there's a real mine here, guys. Look at that. You can actually see down there a little ways. Might be harder for you guys. I don't know how the camera is focusing, but there's that ladder continues. But this actually, presumably they would pull up carts and stuff and dump it up here at the top. But the Flora Temple Mine, an 1870s mine. And that shaft, I can't really see the bottom. It goes down deep. If you peek out there, that looks like an original to me too. Pretty sure she said some of these out this ways are original placement. And there's something called Rita's Camp right over here. I don't know what that actually is. Not a lot of signage out here either to tell you every little detail, but actually we found one. So what does this say? Another Rita's Camp. So in 1883, Rita came west from Bolivar, Tennessee, looking for the right man, having one of the most elaborate camps in the area. So apparently some lady named Rita came out here looking for a man, and they ask a question at the end of the sign that says, "We wonder, did she ever find the right man?" But apparently she lived out here and single-handedly dug out a hole by the mill looking for silver. She said everyone was always welcome, and she had a pot of beans and coffee brewing most of the time. So probably trying to accommodate miners. You think she'd have an easy time. It's probably mostly men out here. I think they said if the doors aren't locked, you can go in some of these things, just pull it open and make sure you close it behind you, they said. And this is maybe one of the ones that I suspect we can actually go in. Yep. Have some plumbing in here, some pipes and old school shower heads. So this would have been like a shower area, presumably for miners. I'm gonna guess that we're now in the 1900s. I don't think that's 1800s vintage. And this could be, though. This is more along the lines of what you'd expect in the oh wait, is this a brothel? So I think that bathtub, it's wooden, it looks like. Maybe not, I can't tell if it's, yeah, it looks like it has like a wooden rim, but apparently that is a original bathtub from maybe the 1920s at a brothel. Here's a sign over here, let's see if it says something. So miners working for the Holmes brothers in 1944 effort, taking a minute to have their, yeah, so it's a bunkhouse, I think. And I'm guessing this photo says these guys in the 20s, or I'm sorry, in the 40s when they were mining lead, took a picture in front of the bunkhouse. So maybe this very structure that we're in right now, in fact. So that would make a little bit more sense to me, that it's kind of a shared space for miners working out here. You'd have to guess that one of those people was probably a loud snorer. I wonder how they dealt with that back in the day. So yeah, this is, here we're officially confirming it, I guess. This is a bunkhouse, and miners, especially those with their families, often had their own campsite, tent or cabin, as the population grew, eventually reaching 3,000 people out here. It's a big little town. So bunkhouses became necessary for miners and workers, many of whom were transient. So they weren't really putting down roots with families, they were just looking for work. And the standard bunkhouse was a barracks-like building, large open room with narrow beds or cots for each individual, offering little privacy. The bunkhouse of the late 19th century was usually heated by a wood stove, and personal needs were attended to in an outhouse. I don't know. I don't think I would dig it too much. I would do what I'd have to do, but sharing a space like this, I don't know. Maybe when you're younger. I know if you're in the military or something, that's probably something you're used to. Maybe that's the outhouse, but it does say restroom, so I'm wondering if they have fitted this with modern stuff. Maybe not. Well, maybe. Let's see. All right. Looks like it might be usable. Okay, so I guess, yeah, this is kind of a, if you want the experience of using a restroom in like an old outhouse, I think this is, there's no toilet paper right now, it looks like, unless there's some in the can, but I think you could actually get that experience if you want to. Still haven't seen that cemetery or graveyard. I think they called it a graveyard. Some other original looking buildings here. Small cabins or workshops, I presume. Looks like there might be a date or something on here. First cabin site, originally dug, cut to protect from Indian attack by late 1864. Huh, so they're saying this is a 1860s cabin, huh? Let's take a look at this. Another one I think we can actually go in if we want, if we can get that open. Oh, wow. Oh, neato. More old bottles and telling some of the stories of the earliest miners here. But definitely an old looking structure with some of that wood looks like it's starting to be paper thin. Old chest too. There's just so many cool artifacts in this place. And then this building is sided with old 50-gallon carbide cans. So they would take cans, and carbide was the way they would carbide lamps. I've used one before, and it's combustible, and it would form like a little candle, like a fuel for that. So I guess the cans that they shipped the carbide stuff in, they would flatten out and then make do with what they had and build the walls for structures like this. That's neat. Carbide lamps were more of a that came into use after 1900. So you've seen bottle houses on our journeys. So oftentimes, because of lack of wood in the desert, you'd see entire houses built this way. I've actually seen I found a homestead out like the Thule homestead way out past Lake Pleasant. You'll look at the concrete and sure enough, filling in the walls, I think there were cans and other things like this in there. And that was probably from the 1920s, but not an uncommon style that you might see. I don't know if this is original or not, but let's go in and see. Oh, we can go in. She wasn't kidding. She's like, you can pretty much go in most buildings here, and you absolutely can. Oh, how beautiful is this? Let me show you this. That's nice. That would look good in a modern home, I think. It's kind of like got a stained glass kind of feel, but it's all empty bottles. That is fantastic. I don't know what this was. Kind of gives me the vibes of like a bunch of blueprints and stuff. I was going to say an assay office, but usually you would see, I don't know, those crucibles or whatever they're called, those little, I forget the name now, but usually assay offices would have a lot more stuff in them, but it still could be. Like old records. Imagine if those are original. I could dig through that all day. Now I do like the main town because that's where you get the biggest abundance of artifacts. It's definitely got a museum feel to it. But I like spots like this the best. I think I see the cemetery, by the way. But yeah, I like spots like this the best because they feels like they're original and they're in their original spots for some reason. And just has more of a real ghost town feel, like something you might find on your own in the middle of nowhere kind of feel. So what do we got here? Castle Dome Mining and Smelting, 1871, lots for sale. That is cool. It's got a very unique Old West looking feel, doesn't it? So what do we got here? Oh, it's cool, an old Arizona Territory map or replica map. It's like a post office. You can pick up your mail, recording. I don't know, that's neat. Some old looking papers in there and so much cool stuff. I'm guessing this is the old post office here. Hey there, buddy. Aren't you a little warm? It's starting to warm up out there today. Sun's coming out. It's going to be a hot one. And if you look off into the desert, like you have the remnants of probably some other kind of hoist house or something. I'm guessing mining right there. All these random structures out there. I could see waste piles out there. Lots of fenced off pits. I mean, they were busy out here. They did a lot of digging, which is interesting because oftentimes I see mines like built into mountains and stuff, and all of this is out here in the open. A little bit different than usual, but I'm guessing this is the original town cemetery or graveyard as they called it. And I don't think we're going to see too much of interest in terms of that. The 1930 was when the last man was buried here. He was putting gasoline in his car when the motor was really hot. He spilled some of He spilled some on the motor and there's a big explosion. So Yuma's corner came out and decided it would be just to bury him here. And this other sign says Juan Lego was killed in 1901 when a new guy came into town, noticed his girl. Juan was jealous, noticed his girl. So Juan was jealous and a gunfight ensued and Juan was killed by the new guy in town, which is a story you hear repeated a lot. And then this is cool. They usually don't get the story about the people buried here, but Manuel Santoral, a miner who was killed in a drunken brawl in 1898. Saw a couple in the 1898 killings here. And another one, Rafael Guthrie, was killed in 1881 by an infamous outlaw, Blanco Flores, who had killed already in cold blood. I think some of these we may have read about in that sheriff's office. And Castle Dome's graveyard was on the brink of being totally forgotten. And though no grave had a name, we know some who are buried here due to when the death occurred, is what they claim. I don't know if all the stones are in their original placements. Very well could be. They had to do that, I think so. The coyotes wouldn't come and dig up the bodies. But, you know, we already read that, so we can already assume that is not an original monument because there was one hanging up in the church that looked very similar to that, and they said it was the last original one removed from this very spot. So I'm guessing this was put up at a later time, but it wouldn't take long, you know, probably even in our lifetime it would deteriorate. So, but this is really cool. I guess they don't really know who is who here, but I tell you what though, if these are the original rocks, they did it upright. I've seen many pioneer cemeteries, so they put a lot of effort and moved some really large stones on top of the graves here. So that's really cool. So there's one more structure down there that I'm gonna skip today. I always like to leave a couple things to have us come back, but I see a lot of heavy equipment over there. Probably similar to what we've seen, but I do have another video I'm making today, and we're heading way off into this wilderness to see a real mine that hasn't been moved. That's not part of this, it's part of Kofa now. And I got some tips on some other mines on the way there that we'll have to scout it out. So that's gonna be, should be, as long as everything goes according to plan, that should be next week's video if you wanna see that. But we gotta walk all the way back to the main museum grounds and then we'll tidy this one up. This is great, especially this area. I like this part. And I guess while I stand here one last time and just all I hear is the wind, and I look at that colorful landscape out there, and I just think back to the people that they made their way out here, right? You're in the middle of nowhere, really harsh environment, harsh times, harsh people, harsh work, yet the adventure of it all had to have been worth it. I think it would be worth it for me to at least do it for a couple days. And then I'd probably say, okay, I'm ready to get off this ride now. Wasn't that neat? I always just feel guilty. You know, I'm now passing other scribbled signs and things all over the ground and markers. And there's one last that we'll read, I guess. I am truly heading out, I promise. But what is this? The Flora Temple Mine. This is hard to read, I'll show you. It's on a granite plaque. A lot of the writing's coming out, but I think it says, this is the point of discovery of the Flora Temple Mine. So 1870s vintage. So I'm guessing we're kind of in the older section of this whole thing. So, and I mean, we even, since we even saw those Spanish workings, we know this goes way back, well, before that. I'm guessing I don't know, what did it say earlier? Did it say 1700s or who knows? But this was part of Spain, I guess, and then Mexico at one point before the Gadsden purchase of, what was it, 1853? When everything south of the Gila River became part of the U.S. to what is now the current Mexican border. So at one point we would not have been in the US, we'd be in Mexico. Everybody likes their cowboys and, you know, Wyatt Earp and all that stuff, but there was a lot going on here for hundreds of years, you know, with the Spanish, well before that, then Mexico, you know, so it's, there's a lot more history, I would say, than just the bang bang, I'm your huckleberry history in Arizona. Just when I thought we found it all, there's another door open that I missed. So I know I've missed a couple things. I'm kind of making my way back to the front. We came across another saloon. It's the building right in the middle. I mistakenly thought it was closed earlier, but it's really cool artwork up there. This looks kind of original to me. Maybe this is where a proprietor lived. Maybe it was a brothel. I have no idea. Old rug, though. I think the cookhouse is another one that I mistakenly thought was closed off. Maybe the doors were closed earlier, or more likely I didn't notice, but I remember seeing all that purple glass in the front. But the cookhouse, so I'm guessing, probably for all intents and purposes, a small restaurant or cafeteria of the 1800s or 1900s, I don't know. The menu is cactus stew, beans, biscuits, and gravy, and coffee. I'll have me some cactus stew. You can see they have a bunch of glass on display, purple glass in that front window. So I'll give you all one last look here at Castle Dome Mining Museum near Yuma, Arizona. Alrighty folks, I'm hitting the road. Thanks again for joining me today, and join me in the upcoming weeks as I seek out more of this sort of history here in our fantastic state of Arizona, oftentimes in its original placement. See ya.